The stupidest thing I ever did in 2023 is to try and catch falling glass. And that's how I wound up getting injured. So on September 29th, the day was going pretty good. We had just finished eating lunch when one of my babies asked me for chocolate milk. So I opened up the upper cabinets of my kitchen to get a cup for them. And when I did that, I realized that the cup was all the way at the back of the cabinet. And I have a ton of jars like these that were once pasta jars or mayo jars. And I always keep them because I'm like, oh, free jars. And my husband always tells me that I hoard way too many of them. But for some reason, I have trouble getting rid of them. So I was reaching towards the back of the cabinet when a jar in the front started falling. And everything just happened in a split second where I didn't stop to think. I just instinctually leaned forward, I think, to try and catch it. And when that happened, the glass, I don't remember hearing it break, but it must have broken and fell like this. And all of a sudden I felt warmth going down my entire arm. And when I looked at my wrist, half of the jar was just there and I could see inside. So I moved back, the jar finishes falling down, and I immediately go like this to like hold my skin up because the room just started spinning. I wasn't even feeling the pain yet. I was just feeling pure shock. And the only thing that I could think of was to just scream my husband's name over and over and over again. And he comes running out of his office because he was working at the time, and he's like, what's going on? And I have blood gushing down and I'm just holding on, and I tell him I hurt myself. And he's like, well, what do you mean? Is it really bad? And as soon as I release my hand a little bit, my skin is like flapping open. So he starts talking to me, telling me, sorry, you can't pass out because there's glass all over the floor. And if you pass out, I'm not going to be able to get you in the car and get the kids in the car. But my brain stopped working at that point, and all I can feel is fear. And I'm just looking at it and sobbing. And somehow he manages to keep me calm enough to be able to get all of our kids into the car, to get my shoes on and get me into the car. Meanwhile, I'm still holding on to my wrist. Then he drove us to the emergency room. I check in and they ask me what happened. I try and explain to them as best as I can, but my brain is still having trouble making sense of things. And before they put me into a triage room, they have me go back so that they can just wrap me up really tight, because that whole time I'm just applying pressure to try and stop the bleeding. So they have me let go, and as soon as I do, more blood starts gushing out, but the blood that was already there is like jelly. They wrap me up as tightly as possible, and I can still see shiny glass bits everywhere. But at that point, the most important thing was just to get the bleeding to stop. And then I finally get called back, and the first doctor that comes in unwraps me. I just feel so much throbbing pain and like burning sensation, but I don't look at it because I know myself, and if I look at it, I would have just passed out right then and there. But I do ask the doctor how bad it is, and she stays quiet for a moment, and then she says, it looks scary, especially if you're not used to seeing this, but we'll get you all fixed up. And that made me feel a little bit better, but I was still in a lot of pain, and I was also worried for my babies because I didn't want them to feel traumatized. And then they sent me back for x-rays to make sure that I didn't damage anything inside. When I got back to the triage room, another doctor came in and started numbing me so that they could search for glass bits inside of the cut. The numbing hurt so bad, it felt like the needle was going into my bone, and I just kept clenching my teeth, and I kept my eyes closed the whole time. The doctor who stitched me up was really cool. He told me that even though it looked really bad, that he had seen much worse, and he gave us a little story time about how one time a guy came in who had a window pane fall on his arm, and when he came in, his arm was literally like barely hanging on, and it had like sliced off all of his bicep basically. And he said that one was really, really hard to work on. Mine just looked really nasty, but they see crazy stuff like that all the time. And I recently got my stitches out, and I'm feeling a lot better. It's not fully healed, but some areas are starting to scab over finally. And that's how I'm able to get back to editing, which is why some of my videos are going to be a little bit out of timeline. Trying to catch falling glass was definitely the stupidest thing that I've ever done this year, and something I will never ever do again.